Hi all, get ready to be amazed. Believe it or not, we've got another basic observation that crushes the globe Earth model and proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that astronomers not only have their craniums lodged into their rectums, but further shows that throughout history, astronomers and physicists have been so deeply asleep at the wheel, I'm starting to wonder whether they should be allowed to handle dangerous objects like shoelaces or ink pens. We're all very familiar with the so-called midnight sun in the Arctic. Now, I should point out that this basic observation disproves the spinning globe Earth with or without the midnight sun in the Antarctic. In other words, even if the footage from the midnight sun in the Antarctic is real, which I have my doubts about that, but the fact that the sun behaves in the way that it behaves conclusively proves that the world is not a spinning globe hauling ass around the sun. Okay, so all you globe heads out there, feast your eyes on the last time you'll ever see the polar midnight sun phenomenon as proof of a spinning globe. You should relish the moment because your paradigm is about to be completely teabagged. Okay, so we can clearly see the sun is going around in a huge circle near the horizon. It does sort of go up and down away from the horizon and closer to the horizon, and that's attributed to the observer here not being at exactly the North Pole, so that actually works in either model, but the fact of the matter is the sun goes around in circuits overhead, and you might think that sort of works in both models, but let's just see about that. The fact that you can clearly see the sun doing circuits around the North Polar region during the summer solstice equates to indisputable, undeniable proof that the world is not a spinning globe hurling around the sun. After drawing out some quick diagrams, it became pretty clear to me that the observation is adequate to conclusively disprove the globe Earth model alone. Once you see it animated, it'll make perfect sense. Okay, so in this first view, we're looking from the top down at the world. So we're looking up, standing above the North Pole, looking down on the spinning Earth, the axis directly in the center of the blue circle. One thing I'll mention quickly is that in reality, the world would be at sort of an angle to the sun, but the principle still stands since we allegedly get 3 days without the sun setting whatsoever from the observer within the Arctic Circle. So we can safely assume that the alleged angle of the axis isn't going to cause the horizon to obscure the sun at any point. In other words, it's adequate to draw this out without the supposed angle of the axis, as the very same principle would indeed apply. Also, since the sun is so very far away, the difference in distance between, say, high noon and midnight isn't all that much in the grand scheme of things. We're talking about a sun that's over 90 million miles away. So if you take a moment to consider yourself as standing in the Arctic Circle during the solstice and spinning around the spherical Earth, which doesn't actually exist in reality, but if you were to lock your time-lapse camera onto the sun, there's absolutely no reason for you to have a 360-degree swivel on that camera. In reality, if we actually lived on a spinning sphere with the sun being 93 million miles away, for all intents and purposes, the sun would be practically stationary in the globe model. So as you begin to spin towards the east, standing on the Arctic Circle, the sun would begin to head towards the right in the sky. At the point where you had to pan your camera about 45 degrees of it going off to the right of you, you'd be able to stop there and you'd start to head backwards on the spinning Earth. You're still heading eastward, of course, but relative to the sun, you'd be sort of backing away from it, and so you could keep that about, 45-degree angle to keep it locked in place in your camera. And you'd basically just keep your camera fixed at that position for the next 6 hours, only, maybe slightly decreasing that angle slowly during that 6-hour period. Now, during the next 6-hour period, you'd be looping around the other side of the Earth, with the sun visible all the while, and so the sun would start to travel back towards the 0-degree angle of your camera up until, say, midnight, at which point the sun would head to its peak 45-degree angle in the other direction, so off to your left, and this portion would, of course, take about 6 hours, and then you'd spend the following 6 hours basically keeping your angle locked towards the left, perhaps lessening the degree slightly over the 5 hours or 6 hours or so, and Then you'd begin to see the sun head towards the right again for the next 6 hours. And so, all in all, if we lived on a globe from the Arctic Circle during this phenomenon known as the midnight sun, if you filmed the sun, you should absolutely never go all the way around. The fact that the sun indeed goes in 3 consecutive circles over a 3-day period proves 100% certainly that the heliocentric model is wrong. You really can't argue against this point, just like you can't argue against most of the other basic proofs that the world lacks all sphericity and motion. I want you flat earthers out there to soak this in a bit, and all you globe earthers out there, you can come back when you're done crying into your toilet for 5 hours. Not to be rude, but I'm really growing tired of all the people out there claiming to have debunked the so-called flat earth theory because they debunked 1 or 2 of Mark Sargent's red herring arguments. Comets are supposedly drifters in our galaxy which somehow make their way back to the sun after sometimes hundreds of years drifting off into the far reaches of space. Their journey near the sun is swift, but they get shot off into so-called space and don't return for decades or even centuries. Now, this might not seem like a problem at first, but if you think about it, how did the comets know where to return after all those years? The sun isn't in the same place anymore. It's way off in some other place, going around a curve around the center of the galaxy. So, of course, conventional orbital mechanics don't hold up to theoretical scrutiny, and that's just basic orbital mechanics. But that's even besides the point. How can a comet that traveled near the sun on a close quote-unquote orbit get jettisoned off into space for hundreds of years and then somehow find its way back to the sun on time like clockwork if the sun is ostensibly billions of miles from where it was the last time around? This might make some sense if the sun were stationary, but if you consider the globe model, the sun must be traveling at nearly 500,000 miles per hour around the galactic center, and let's not forget the galaxy hurling through space at over 1,000,000 miles an hour. So, and none of these things are traveling in straight lines, except for maybe the center of the galaxy might be traveling in a straight line, but everything else is going along a giant curve, including the sun. So there's absolutely no explanation for comets to somehow find their way back to the sun after hundreds of years. It's ridiculous. In the heliocentric model, that is. So the fact that comets return like clockwork prove that the world isn't a spinning sphere. This doesn't mean if you find a comet that hits the sun, then the Earth is somehow a globe, by the way. If that's what you're thinking, you can just stop it. The simple fact is that even one single comet, if even one ever returned after decades or hundreds of years, returned to the sun after being flung in some wild velocity off into space, proves that the system itself is stationary, and it proves that the heliocentric model is wrong. Another instance is we can see the same constellations for all of history. There's no possible way to have consistent constellations for this amount of time. We can't even observe the night sky other than during the nighttime. During the day, an entire sector of, quote, space is rendered invisible thanks to the pesky sun causing this little thing called daytime. This means that the nighttime is always the sector of space that's away from the sun. So if we can see one single star from winter to summer, this conclusively proves that the world isn't a spinning sphere and the heliocentric model is wrong. By the way, we can see lots of the same stars from winter to summer, and there is no exclusivity to summer stars versus winter stars. It's just the same stars on a different position around their circuit around the magnetic center. The North Pole star Polaris remains visible directly above the North Pole all night long, proves that it's not nearly as distant as we're told, and it also proves that the Earth isn't a spinning globe. Think of triangulation. If you're facing north, which is in towards the axis and basically up towards the top of the globe, at dusk, it's represented by the line AB. From the same position, say 10 hours later, near dawn, still facing in the same direction, north from the same spot, just spun around the Earth, you see. Since the Earth is rotated, the line of sight towards Polaris is represented near dawn by the line LS. If you can understand basic geometry, this proves conclusively that Polaris couldn't possibly be as distant as we're told. Polaris would have to be, in the globe Earth model, would have to be in 2 different places at once, or travel billions of light years through space every night just to maintain its position above our measly little North Pole. How can you justify this on a globe Earth? To make this even worse for you globe heads, Polaris also happens to be visible from season to season, not to mention visible from as far south as the Capricorn. There's simply no possible way for you to explain this, especially the Polaris being visible from season to season. You can't explain it in your model. None of this evidence is difficult to understand, and it's all repeatable, observable logic. Astronomers have been fooled since they were mere toddlers, and they believe that we live on a spinning globe no matter what. This makes it literally impossible for a serious astronomer to become a flat earther because the two ideas are mutually exclusive. If a serious astronomer made an observation that didn't jive in the globe Earth model, which surely that's been done, he or she would be confounded for sure. They would absolutely never postulate a flat Earth model, nor would they share the idea with any of their peers if it did occur to them, which it wouldn't. People have a hard time understanding how all these different people from all different walks of life and different scientific backgrounds could be in on such a major, stupid hoax. That's entirely missing the Great Deception, and it's entirely missing the point. Our society has people trained so perfectly that even though we have all lived on a stationary plane our entire life, if someone calls it a stationary plane, they get heckled, ostracized, shunned, bullied, and trolled by the most ridiculous, illogical idiots who deem themselves to be wise, because they can regurgitate what we were all taught as toddlers. The world actually doesn't have any curvature either. We can prove this. There is no 8 inches per mile squared vertical drop here in reality. In reality, we can clearly see buildings from over 50 to 60 miles away when they should be based nearly a quarter mile below the horizon from that distance. We can clearly see perfect reflections in large bodies of water. Furthermore, from a weather balloon without a fisheye lens, we can clearly see that the world is not spinning, and we can clearly see it's not a globe. The horizon is indeed horizontal. It's not a misnomer, it just is what it is. The world is stationary. The horizon is horizontal. The world is a plane, not a planet, and could not possibly be, nor has it ever been, a spinning globe. The fact that you can't wrap your brain around the conspiracy is irrelevant. The fact that you think some smart people would have figured this out by now is the most retarded thing I've ever heard. We've figured it out. The world isn't spinning. The Bible, oddly enough, was correct. We should probably pay more attention to that, just saying. But to watch people make total fools of themselves, debunking the flat earth by poking holes in red herring arguments and parading around the Colosseum like they're Leonidas himself is just so comical. I'm sorry to go off on this tangent, but look at the evidence. If you can come up with a model that explains the behavior of the sun during the solstice in the Arctic Circle, please share it. It's not a spinning globe. The flat earth model works with this observation just like it works with all the other observations, yet you can allegedly fly to Argentina from Sydney because Mark Sargent said that proved the flat earth, therefore we live on a globe. That's not science. Science is observing data and casting aside models that don't work with the observations. We don't have any accurate maps, but that doesn't mean we can't navigate with the maps on the globe or on the flat earth. Maps work in either model. Anyways, people claim to have debunked the flat earth because of light. They say since fiber optic cables can carry light for tens of thousands of miles, then Mark Sargent is wrong because there is no dome made of fiber optic cables in the sky. I guess that's the logic they used for that, but oh my goodness, what is going on here? People think that because they can debunk Mark Sargent and his red herring arguments, that somehow means we live on a globe. They also claim to have debunked the flat earth because companies might mine on asteroids one day. What does that even mean? I'm really sorry, but would you people please stop repeating nonsense? It's only going to make us all look stupid, and we're not even the ones who believe the earth is a spinning sphere. I just wish the average person had the capacity to distinguish between the obvious truth that the world is a fixed plane and the obvious fiction that is often promoted by Mark Sargent. You can debunk the red herring arguments that are purported by entities like the Flat Earth Society. You simply can't claim that equates to proof of a globe. I'm sorry, but it appears we're losing the scientific method here.